Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Miracle Healing. I'm your host, Lisa Campion, and today we're going to dive really deep into the sacred waters of spiritual transformation with a really remarkable guest. We have David Hulse, and he's a spiritual pioneer, a wisdom keeper who's really walked an interesting journey kind of from a pretty strong, stringent religious experience to a really expansive spiritual seeker. He's had decades of experience as a minister, teacher, healer, and author. And David's journey began with a powerful mystical encounter that awakened a new understanding of the divine, not as something distant or dogmatic, but as an intimate presence alive within every cell of our being. And through what he calls a cellular awakening, David discovered the intelligence of the body and the interconnectedness of all life. So he is also the founder of this Academy for Spiritual Awakening, where he blends ancient wisdom with contemporary metaphysics, helping light workers, seekers, and healers navigate the shift from 3D limitations into the 5D consciousness. I'm so glad to have you here, David. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me. I'm looking forward to our time together.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So your story is so fascinating. Can you share a little bit about how you went from being kind of pretty religious, ministerial type person to this much more mystic, like a mystic? So what happened? How did you get there?
Well, I was raised in a very strict fundamentalist family. My own aunt was my pastor, which is
Wow.
very unusual to have a woman fundamentalist pastor in the 50s. But that gave me the wonderful experience of the feminine in an all masculine religion. So that has
Mhm.
served me very well that I've been able to integrate, the yin and the yang, the male and the female together without having that old mindset whatsoever. I tell you, Lisa, the way I kind of describe this is, um, and I happen to believe that there is a collective critical mass of souls who have incarnated at this time who have not come through the same vibrational frequency or portal to incarnate. And what I mean by that is because of this portal being open to people that have pre chosen their contracts and agreements to be here for the planet at this particular time, I believe have come in on a little higher frequency that they didn't go as deeply asleep into the world of 3D matter. And
Mm,
I think they have been conscious born. And
mm.
I think I'm maybe one of those. And I think probably a lot of people that is being attracted to your podcast are a part of that, or we wouldn't be on here together because the call is going out for the light worker.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying there is I had a different rapport with time and space. I sat and I listened to all this religious uh, dogma and doctrine about God and Jesus and all of that. And I had a hunger for spirituality, but I couldn't buy into the dogma and the doctrine. So what I'm saying, I didn't learn that. I brought it in with me. So
Mm,
those that are listening to us may resonate with that. Like I've been the one that's always been a little different. I was the
mhm.
one that was seen as stubborn. Maybe I was somebody that I couldn't buy into the status quo. And that's the people I think we're speaking to
Yeah.
today and telling you that was fine. It's okay. You're not weird. You're just spiritual, and you
Mhm.
are not here to be religious as much as spiritual. So I immediately had that different questioning inside myself, and I couldn't get any answers from my religion or the ministers. They kept telling me I can't understand it till I die and go to heaven and I can ask Jesus or something. I said, no, that's not good enough for me. I want to know now if I'm going to give my life to this thing. And so I think that began a certain part of my trajectory toward my spirituality was questioning everything. Buddha says, question everything. Don't believe
Mhm.
anything first. And I think that's a good advice for us to realize that what information and knowledge we need is innately within our being, our spirit. And I
Right.
think when people learn that, we can not just keep building on other people's. I read a statistic recently that about 87% of all the thoughts that a person has in a lifetime, somebody else has had.
Yep. And they've had. They've had their
They've
own,
had
as Bruce
mhm.
Lipton Bruce Lipton
Yeah,
talked about that. Yeah,
yeah.
and how, like, we just recycle the same
Eh,
80% of our thinking over and over and over again, and it's kind of like this loop thought loop that we go on that that's hard to sort of get new information in there.
exactly, you're exactly
Yeah.
right. So at around 16, 17 years old, at a young age, I had a spiritual experience. And, of course, they called it the baptism of the Holy Spirit, but it was outside of that. It was, the way I describe it was a penetration of a higher part of my consciousness penetrated into my normal human
Mm.
mind.
Yep.
And it was like a penetration, and that penetration was through the womb of my willingness. This is the way I say it. I was
Mhm.
willing to whatever God, spirit, universe had, I was ready for it. And I think by opening that womb of consciousness that the penetration came in, and believe it or not, conception happened.
Mm.
And the conception has been 60 some years of downloads that has come through a different part of my human mind that that's a higher mind that comes in. So a lot of my speaking has been channeled. When I had Some Energetics, which 25 years was a training for using vibration tuning forks and sound therapy,
Mhm.
I downloaded all of that because of the openness that I
Right.
think I had to receive, from higher fifth and beyond dimension.
I just
So
love
that's
that.
kind of how it all started.
I love that story, and I think it's so relatable, like you said, to the people that are probably, watching and listening to us right now, because I used to call those people born awake. Like, some people are just born awake, you
Love
know?
it. Like it.
And they even as little kids, you can see them, they're, like, wide awake, and they're like, "What am
Oh
I
my
doing
God.
here?"
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think even more and more people are waking up, and so it's super exciting to hear about your experience, and mine is very
Mhm.
similar. I had pretty mystical experiences through my whole teenage life. My parents were hippies and meditators, and
Yeah. Yeah.
gave me a copy of Yogananda's book when I was really young, and I was like,
Wow.
"Whoa, that's the thing." So I had a pretty similar experience. I love that, experience you had. Now you talk about sort of really, like, the somatic part, feeling it in your cells, sort of this, like, cellular awakening, and I was so curious about that. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of your
Sure.
awakening?
That brings us up to around 1988. And there was something about if everybody listening who's old enough to remember
It was
88 and
it was the
89.
harmonic convergence.
Yeah, it was, and I didn't know what that was, but I read it, and I had a staff of people at that time, and they all were so upset with me because I made them all get up early in the morning, go hold hands in a park across the street for something we didn't even know what we were doing, but we were definitely connecting into the collective global consciousness, no doubt about it. Things began
Yep.
to change at that particular time. But also at that time, I went through a kind of a dark side of the soul, you'd call it. It was a kind
Mm,
of a death of some kind that I was going through. And the death was, I thought at that time, was God and all the things that I believed. I thought, I can't believe I've been in this all these years and I'm losing everything that I have believed was just crumbling before me and whatever. And I was speaking in Memphis, Tennessee. I'll never forget. In fact, in my book, there's a chapter called "Misery in Memphis," in which I was speaking, and I'd kind of lost that flow. I just felt like it was the end. What am I going to do with my life thing? And to make a long story short, a woman came to one of my talks and said, I don't know why, but I bought this cassette at that time. It was a cassette and said, it wasn't for me. I threw it in the trash. And when I got up this morning, Spirit said, go get that trash, get out of the trash. It's for David. It wasn't for you. So she gave me this little cassette tape. Well, I was in this horrible part of Memphis. I was in a motel room that had a sign that says "Do not walk outside, danger, neighborhood, whatever." And so there I was, kind of in this horrible place that I did not understand. And I was in this motel room. I had the TV didn't work, nothing was working, but I had a little cassette player that I traveled with, and something said, "Go get that cassette," because I'd put it in my pocket. Well, I was listening to that and I was just kind of bored with it. It was a guy with an accent. It wasn't scripture. I didn't have any connection with it. So I was kind of dozing and he said something so important. And it was that what we have thought is empty space in the human cell is a teeming electromagnetic field of all possibility. And
Mhm.
Lisa, something electrified through the cells of my body. And I just shot up out of that chair. And I knew that what was ending for me was not God, but my old belief in God was dying. It was an old belief system that was dying. And I knew that I was getting ready to move into a whole new adventure. And that person on that tape was Deepak Chopra, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, he wasn't that known at that time, as kind of before Oprah and
Yeah.
all the fame that he had, but it was Deepak Chopra that made that statement that changed everything, and I didn't get it in my brain was going, "What in the
Mm.
world does that mean?" But my body intelligence, my inner soul mind was awake with just such electricity and potential of the next chapter of my path.
That's so beautiful. And now sort of the cutting edge scientists and metaphysicians say that what's inside the cell is plasma, and that plasma is sort of like the fifth state of matter that
Yes.
is, in that the universe is made out of, and it's really consciousness and divine consciousness, God consciousness, and that we
Mhm.
have that inside of ourselves. That's
Mhm.
beautiful.
I know everybody's
Yeah.
kind of more, and I was for a long time into just conscious evolution, but
Mhm.
I've coined a different term, bioconscious evolution,
I love
because
that.
I think that consciousness now is at some frequencies and levels of vibration that it is becoming more connected to us at a cellular level. And,
Mhm.
the old religious teachings of resurrection of the body, there's a meaning there. I say don't throw the
Mm.
baby out with the bathwater, because there's deep codings of metaphysical meanings and all those things that religion has made them into their dogma and their doctrine. But I do believe that there is a raising that is happening of our vibrational frequency of what it means to be a human being is going to the next level of what is going to be. For instance, I don't know if people know this, but if you can look it up and see that the blood that runs through our veins is congel light.
Mm.
It is actually light in the density of being changed into blood. And
Wow.
it says that life is in the blood and life is the light of men. And I see something that is not just within, but I think as some of these new gospels of Nag Hammadi, Book of
Mhm.
Thomas, and all of that is telling us
Mhm.
that when the inner becomes the outer becomes uh, outer becomes the inner becomes the outer, then you shall behold, the
Right.
dominion of light. And I
Wow.
think that's happening right now. So I became very fascinated in the year of 2000 when I was in a deep meditation situation, and I heard the term deoxyribonucleic acid. I
Mm.
didn't even know how to say that. And I thought, where did that come from? But immediately I started being open to learning about DNA and genetics and all that kind of thing. So that's was a big direction for me, where more spirituality and science and physics all begin to come together.
It's beautiful. I love that, and it's I think sort of old school mysticism had this kind of idea that we were supposed to transcend out of our bodies, like we were supposed to ditch the human body and just kind of go back to, God. Like you said, you go to heaven and then you get to talk to Jesus. And I love what you're saying is like, well, we're and to me it makes sense. It's what I've always believed and experienced. It's like we need to be the embodiment of that. And that means we have to hold on to our body. And yet our body is transforming, becoming more light. Our DNA is people talk about, DNA activation and like how our new strands of DNA are coming in as we're shifting and accessing these higher strands of consciousness. And it's like I love the mitochondria. I sort of like have a mitochondria thing because they are actually the part of our cells that create light. I mean, they're they do
Light power.
photosynthesis.
That's light
Yeah, they're light
power.
powered. They're
Yeah.
literally, providing cellular energy through the power of light. It's amazing, like, when we really think about that, and I wonder sort of as our galaxy is shifting into the energy, the rays of the central sun, that we're getting those pulses of energy from the central sun that is shifting our frequency, giving us light codes. They say light codes come from the sun, right? That kind of that activates these shifts in consciousness. So to me, somehow, even though it sounds a little crazy, it all makes sense to me like that it should be that way.
I hear you. I'm with you 100%. Yes, this is a major, major shift. I'll tell you what happened. Also, another shift that happened to me is I still use the body, mind, spirit for a teaching tool, but
Mhm,
that's really becoming more and more the old paradigm. And that
mhm,
happened when I started reading some of Einstein and those of early quantum thinking, who stated, and this is simple, but it was profound, everything is energy. I
mhm,
thought of my body having energy. I thought everything had an energy field, but I never thought of anything being energy.
mm,
And when I realized that, I realized the body, mind, and spirit is all energy. It's not separate energy.
right.
And that began to change everything for me. And so I've taught all of the students that I've taught. One of the things I teach them is that everybody teaches the body has an aura. I teach the aura has a body. I think
Mhm.
it's coming in this way from the
Yep.
etheric, the causal, the astral, mental, emotional, and coalesce into an etheric blueprint that drives cellular development. So
Yep.
one, and that was my work with the tuning forks and vibration was in the etheric blueprint to change it.
Yep.
Deepak Chopra again said that we get a new liver every 6 weeks. And I thought somebody came to me and said, well, I know somebody that has cancer. Why do they still have cancer if every 6 weeks they get a new liver? And I said, because they're reading the same blueprint that caused the cancer in the first place.
Mhm.
So we got to get more into cause. And that's the old model of medicine that's losing right now is symptoms. We're trying to find deeper meanings. Now we got functional doctors, integrative doctors, energetic doctors, and this is all changing and shifting more toward a different way of, I think, looking at what we've called reality is just not reality anymore.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I love that. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about what the fifth dimension means to you. And what is that like? What does it mean when we get there? How do we know we got there? What do we do when we get there? All of those all of those things.
That's a great question, and I'm not sure I have exact answers, but and the reason I don't is because I think that what I call the ego part, that pseudo self part of ourselves, it needs to remain a mystery to some degree, because
Mhm.
once it gets a hold of it, it starts recreating it with its own agenda, which is always a belief in separation, right? That's what
Mhm.
original sin is, by the way, is a belief
Mhm.
in separation.
Yep.
And so, what I think is happening is the planet. I mean, Mother Earth is just poised for this. She's just ready to jump into a less dense planet and to become a more etheric planet. And another thing, and I know we don't have time to get into it, but everybody goes from 3 to 5, and nobody talks about 4, and
Mhm.
that's a missing piece here. I think that's very important that we're going through right now, which means a time of all of our pathologies emerging on the body politic for healing.
Yep.
And that's what we're going through. And that's why we're having this time of extremities politically and everything that is going on. All of this is not fun, but it's very spiritual what is going on. And to those
Yeah.
of a spiritual mind can see through this illusion of all this hate and fighting and everything and see that everything is going into chaos to recreate itself in a higher dimension that is going on. So, and everyone that's out there that's really discouraged about what's going on, we need to remind them, Melissa, today that they chose to be here for this, and they've been
Yeah.
equipped to go through this and not lose their power and not
Right.
lose their connection to their higher purpose.
That's great reminder. And what are some things that we can do that? Like, what does that look like? How do we are there some practices that you can recommend, or how do you do the work to keep your frequency higher?
Okay. Well, there's a whole list of things, of course, meditation, contemplation, uh, reading more higher things to learn from that raises your consciousness, being around right people. I think it's very important right now. People who have a
Mhm.
vision for transformation. Um, we are the caterpillar. We are the caterpillar waking up and going, oh my God, what's going on here? But I'm not sure what it is. But something is coming alive in me. So we really need one another. We need community. That's why I started this community of,
Mm,
of awakening, Academy Awakening, was to try to give people a collective space in which we can do this, and not alone, but together. But my passion is vibration. And when I came into this 25 years ago, I was introduced. I don't know if you're familiar with the solfeggio frequencies
mhm.
or not,
Yep.
but that's what grabbed me 25 years ago. And I could not find anything that had those frequencies in for as instruments or music or whatever. And someone said to me, you can have a tuning fork made to any frequency. And
Mhm.
that changed everything for me. So
Yeah.
I believe using vibration. Tuning forks to me is raw vibration. Then you got bowls, you got bells, you got so many wonderful tools that are given to us to help us change and raise our vibration. And I think this is what you do. There's classes out there I think people can be drawn to that really can help them to become an initiate for 5D and beyond. Now,
Yep.
I'm going to try to give you this. I see 3D, I see three as 4 times space. In other words, three, three is space, right? That's kind of
Mhm.
height, width, and breadth. And
Yep.
then Einstein came along and added a fourth time to it. Now we're at the end of time as we've known it, as we've come out of Piscean into Aquarian, and therefore we're in a curve. Einstein said everything when it gets its most dense level curves and follows the curve or spiral of the universe.
Mm,
So I believe 5D is a spiral for people. And we're going to go 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on and so forth. And that's why we're becoming multi-dimensional consciousness. All this thing about multiverses and all that that's getting popular is not by accident, but the
right.
language is changing to match where consciousness is going. So I
Mhm.
think that's what people have to do. Another thing I want to say too is you've got to find your path. Every one of you have a unique calling and path. We can't do this as a religion has done it with, let's believe this, let's believe that. But I think everyone has to get into opening up all their old contracts they've forgotten, the agreements that they've forgotten that they've brought in that is deeply. And that's why we need to do a really deep spiritual work, is to help awaken that. How does that happen? By us talking today. Something may resonate with somebody out there or different ones, and they'll go, oh, I got it. And they'll have a feeling like I got it, like I didn't just learn it, but I forgot it and I just remembered it. And that's where consciousness starts raising itself to match the frequency of 5D.
Mm. So that was a great explanation. And sound healing is so powerful. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about your academy. What do you teach? What's it all about?
Okay, well, the Academy, I've tried to make it, since we live in a 3D world, I see three different stages of consciousness. There are those that are beginners. I'm very concerned of being in the fundamentalist church, how many people are dealing with religious trauma. I
Mhm.
mean, some people have been traumatized.
Severely traumatized.
Yeah,
All the recovering Catholics and
yes,
recovering
yes.
fundamentalists for
And
sure.
I get a lot of those. I get a lot of gay people who have been so horribly done, and women themselves who have been
Mhm.
totally edited out of it. So there's a work to be done there. So one of my first classes that I offer is called Bible 101. And that's because I think people say, I don't believe this anymore. I don't believe that. But it doesn't mean what you believed is not still a pattern in your etheric self. So
Right.
I tackle the hard things like, what is sin? Where did it come from? What does it really mean? What is salvation? All of those religious points that I think people need to clear out and clean out of their system before they really can move into the next level.
Mm.
And then I have a lot of courses that was downloaded just a few years ago, really during COVID. I was in a real place of downloads. I called it Body, Mind, and Spirit, but boy, the stuff that came in about how we incarnate, why is there a gestation period, what is our I am signature code, all that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things that goes on in the academy for people to find where they are on their path that might help them
Mhm.
to become a little clearer and stronger about moving them forward.
Well, that's wonderful. So if people want to find your academy, how do they find it, David?
They can absolutely find it at just going on. Let me see, I wrote it down here. They can go to, well, you can actually go to David Hulse is one thing that you can go
Mhm.
to. And I got it right here, davidhulse.com, awakening, and there's a sampler there.
Right.
Again, that's David Hulse, HULSE.com,
Mhm.
and awakening sampler. And you'll
Right.
get some samples of teachings that they can tap into and they can look at on there. So
Wonderful.
I'd love for people to do that and let us know what you think. And I really appreciate you letting me to put that out.
That's wonderful. David, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you so much for the work you're doing in the world to provide that community, that space for people, and all this incredible knowledge you have about how to navigate the shift in consciousness that we're experiencing. So I appreciate you and your work very much.
And I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for giving people like me a platform that we can put
Mhm.
our voice out
I
there.
love
So
doing that.
thank you.
I love just these conversations we have and meeting new people. It's so fun.
Right. Sure.
And
Thank you.
if you all wanna find me, you can find me at lisacampion.com. I work mostly with psychics, healers, and empaths who are wanting to step in their gifts. I love to train them up, and my mission in life is to create an army of healers to go out there and save the world, man. 'Cause that world needs saving right about now, and that's what I'm here for. Stop by, visit, leave me a message, send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, you wanna subscribe, you wanna comment on the show, we would love that as well. So thank you so much for being with us today, where we are healing the planet one person at a time right here on the Empower channel.